It was raining harder than it should have in October, the kind of rain that looks intentional, like someone up there turned the volume all the way up just to keep people inside. I was only supposed to help her move a few boxes from the back room of her house, old papers, worn-out books, a broken lamp she said she didn't have the heart to throw away. Then the storm started, and the street outside her window disappeared into water. That's how I ended up there. Staying over. Mira, I still can't say her name without slowing down a little. She teaches literature at the university. Comes into the cafe every morning, orders the same thing, black coffee, 2 sugars. She's not the type you notice for her looks first, though you'd be lying if you said she wasn't beautiful. It's more the way she holds herself, the quietness, the patience, like someone who knows the world's noise isn't worth competing with. The night I stayed, she'd asked if I could help with her study. I said yes before thinking it through. She offered dinner as payment. I remember her apologizing for how little she cooked. I don't usually have guests, she'd said, in that dry, unbothered tone that made you wonder if it was true. Her house smelled like paper and rain. There were stacks of books by the window, all with tiny notes sticking out like flags. The walls were pale and empty except for one framed photograph, a beach, cloudy, with no one in it. She moved around quietly, her sleeves rolled up, the edge of her hair damp from the weather. I kept trying not to stare. She kept pretending not to notice. We talked, but not much. She asked what I was studying. I asked if she still wrote. She smiled, just one corner of her mouth, and said, I used to. Then she changed the subject before I could ask what she meant. At some point, the lights flickered. I laughed, too loud. She didn't. She just said, you can stay if it gets worse. I have a spare room. I didn't argue. Later, when the rain hit the windows hard enough to blur the whole world outside, she made tea. She sat across from me on the couch, legs crossed, holding her cup with both hands. The lamp beside us hummed faintly, the only sound besides the rain. I tried to think of something to say, but she beat me to it. You're quiet tonight, she said. I'm usually not invited to professors' houses, I joked. She smiled again, small but real this time. You're not invited. You're just helping. That line, her tone, the half-second pause before the word helping, it landed somewhere I couldn't explain. Like a dare, or a warning, or both. After tea, she went to check the back door. I heard the click of a lock. I told myself it was just for the storm, but I still noticed the way she turned the key, slow, deliberate, twice. Then she stood there for a moment, her hand still resting on the doorframe, as if deciding something. When she came back, she didn't sit down again. She just said, you can take the guest room at the end of the hall. Towels are in the closet. I nodded. She turned off the lamp. The room fell into darkness except for the light spilling from the hallway. I caught a glimpse of her silhouette against the wall, steady, unreadable, before she disappeared around the corner. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of the thunder, not even because of the wind rattling the windows. It was because of that sound, the faint, echoing click of the lock, replaying over and over in my head. And I couldn't decide if it made me feel trapped. Or chosen. She came by the cafe 2 days later. I almost thought she wouldn't. Same black coat, same quiet step, but there was something different in the way she stood at the counter, like she hadn't decided yet whether to stay or leave. She looked up only when I said her name, softly, before remembering I probably shouldn't. Mira, I said, then caught myself. Professor Lane. Her lips pressed into the faintest smile. You remembered my order. Hard to forget. I slid the cup toward her, but she didn't take it right away. Her fingers hovered just above the lid, pale and still. Then, as if realizing she'd lingered too long, she reached out, our hands almost brushed. Almost. That tiny space between our skin felt louder than anything else in the cafe. She sat at her usual table by the window, the one tucked behind a stack of student notice boards. I watched her take out a small notebook, not her phone. She wrote something, paused, stared outside, then tore the page out and folded it in half. By the time I closed my shift, she was still there. The cup empty, the folded paper resting beside it. "You're still working?" I asked. "I'm avoiding grading," she said, with that dry humor again. They all sound the same after midnight essays and caffeine. I laughed, too quietly. "You could use a break." "I could," she said, and for the first time, didn't sound sure of it. That was how I found myself back at her house again, helping her fix a shelf that had come loose in her study. She claimed it was one of those small things that never quite stays up. The nails were bent, the wood uneven, like it had given up on standing. She stood beside me, holding the flashlight. The beam trembled slightly in her hand. "You don't have to do this," I said. "I know," she replied. "But it's easier with someone else here." Something about the way she said "someone else," not you, made my chest tighten. She watched the wall instead of me, her jaw set, eyes unfocused. There was something unreadable there, exhaustion, maybe, or memory. "Rough week?" I asked carefully. She exhaled, slow. "Rough year." The room went quiet except for the soft hum of the light. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, but her hand lingered there, as if she'd forgotten what she was doing. For a moment, I saw past the calm exterior, a flicker of something fragile. The kind of tired that doesn't come from work, but from holding yourself together too long. When the shelf finally stayed in place, I stepped back. "There," I said. "Not perfect, but standing." She smiled faintly, then looked at the shelf, or maybe through it. "That's all most things need to do," she murmured. Outside, the rain started again, light this time, a soft tapping against the glass. I turned to say something, but she was already watching me. Not staring, just seeing. And in that moment, that half-second of unguarded quiet, I realized how dangerous that calm could be. Because it wasn't just her house pulling me back anymore. It was her silence. It was supposed to be a simple dinner, a thank you for fixing her shelf. Nothing more. That's what she said when she called. I could hear rain in the background again, softer this time, like a memory repeating itself. I told myself I'd only stay for an hour. When I got there, the house felt warmer than before. Dim lights, a quiet radio playing something old. She was in the kitchen, barefoot, sleeves rolled up, stirring something on the stove. The smell of garlic and lemon filled the air. "I didn't know you cooked," I said. "I don't," she replied, glancing back with a half-smile. "That's why you're my test subject." I laughed, but she didn't join me. Her focus stayed on the pan. There was a faint tension around her shoulders, like she was holding a thought she didn't want to say. We ate at the counter instead of the table. The radio hummed between us. I tried to talk about school, about the cafe, anything that didn't sound like what I was actually thinking. She listened, nodded, gave small smiles that never quite reached her eyes. Halfway through dinner, her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it, the screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize, then turned it face down without answering. "You can take it," I said. "No," she said quietly. "It's fine." But the silence that followed wasn't fine. She took a slow breath and reached for her wine, but her hand trembled slightly, just enough to make the glass clink against the counter. I pretended not to notice, though my eyes followed her every movement. "Old friend?" I asked carefully. "Old mistake," she said. Then, realizing what she'd revealed, she forced a small laugh. Sorry. That sounded dramatic. It didn't, I said. Her gaze lifted then, meeting mine. A second too long. I could see something in it, a tired honesty, the kind that slips out when you stop guarding yourself. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then thunder rolled somewhere in the distance, low and heavy. She looked away first. Could you, she started, then hesitated. Could you check the window in the study? I think it's open. I nodded, maybe too quickly. Anything to move, to breathe. When I got there, the window was already closed. The air smelled faintly of her perfume, something clean, like soap and citrus. I turned to call out to her, but she was already standing in the doorway, watching me. You're shaking, she said softly. I'm not, I lied. She stepped closer, close enough that I could see the faint lines around her eyes, the way her hair fell loose from its clip. Close enough that her breath brushed my neck when she spoke. You should go before it gets worse, she murmured. The storm? The confusion. Her words hung there, half warning, half confession. My hands ached to reach for her, but I didn't move. Neither did she. Then the phone rang again from the kitchen. She turned, breaking the moment, and I stood there frozen, pulse racing, breath uneven, watching her walk away into the sound of someone else's voice. I never found out what she said on that call. But I still remember the way her hand brushed the doorframe as she left, like she almost reached back for me, then stopped. It happened a week later, late evening again, rain again, though softer now, like it had run out of anger. I'd dropped off a book she'd lent me. The Waves, Virginia Woolf. I could have left it at her door, but I didn't. She opened before I even knocked twice, as if she'd been standing on the other side. You could have just kept it, she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes weren't. I didn't want to forget it was yours. She stepped aside. You make returning a book sound like a confession. Maybe it is, I said before I could stop myself. We didn't laugh this time. Inside, the house felt colder, the kind of cold that doesn't come from temperature, but from too many hours alone. There was a half-finished cup of tea on the counter, a lamp left on in the corner, a cardigan draped over the chair like someone had been halfway through leaving and changed their mind. She noticed me looking. You shouldn't come by this often, she said quietly. I know. Then why do you? I don't know. She looked at me then, really looked. Like she was searching for a line neither of us could draw. You're too young to be this uncertain, she murmured. I almost told her it wasn't uncertainty. It was everything else, everything I couldn't name without breaking something. Instead, I said, you're not as old as you pretend to be. That made her laugh, a dry, trembling sound. She turned away, rubbing her hands together. You don't know what that means yet. Then tell me, I said. Her silence stretched between us, fragile but unbreakable. The clock ticked. The rain pressed faintly against the glass. She exhaled, eyes closing for a second. This, she began, gesturing vaguely between us. This isn't what it looks like. You know that, don't you? I don't know what it looks like anymore. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The air felt heavier now, filled with things unsaid, the late nights, the glances, the way she'd started leaving her porch light on longer. You make it sound simple, she whispered. But it isn't. I'm not asking for simple. What are you asking for, Jonas? Her voice cracked slightly on my name, and that alone felt like a confession. I swallowed hard. Just tell me if I've imagined all of this. She didn't answer. Just stepped closer, slow, until I could see the reflection of myself in her eyes, a version of me that looked older, lonelier, less sure. Mira, I said, the word barely a sound. She reached out then, fingertips brushing my sleeve. Not a touch, a test. I didn't move. Neither did she. And then she whispered, almost to herself, "Don't make me feel seen if you're not going to stay." The words landed like a stone in my chest. I didn't say anything back. I just stood there aching, breath shallow, as she turned off the lamp, leaving both of us in the half-dark, pretending we hadn't already crossed the line. I hadn't planned on going back. But she texted, "If you're not busy, could you help me with the computer again?" No greeting. No sign-off. Just that. When I got there, she was sitting at her desk, staring at a flickering screen. A folder of photos was open. She didn't look up when I entered. "I think it froze," she said. But her voice sounded far away, not really about the computer. I leaned over her shoulder, close enough to smell her perfume, faint citrus and something like rain on old paper. The monitor showed a picture of a man standing beside her, maybe 10 years younger than she is now. He was holding a book, smiling like someone who didn't know yet that the moment would end. "He was my husband," she said quietly, before I could ask. "Used to be." Her fingers hovered over the mouse, not clicking, not moving. "I didn't mean to open that folder," she added, like she owed me an apology for remembering. I nodded, but didn't know what to say. My throat felt tight, like any sound might come out wrong. "We met when I was your age," she said. "He was reckless. Brilliant. Terrible with time." She gave a faint smile, not out of fondness but self-defense. "He used to say that some people arrive too early in your life, and others too late. We were both late." Her words sank in slow. I felt them more than heard them. "Is he gone?" she said simply. Then after a pause, not in a tragic way. "Just, life does that. It unthreads things quietly." The rain began again outside, soft, deliberate. I looked at the photo, her younger, brighter, laughing with someone who saw her the way I did now. A strange guilt settled in me, heavy and shapeless. "You remind me of him sometimes," she said suddenly. "Not your face. The way you hesitate before saying something true." I didn't move. Couldn't. She turned to look at me, and for the first time, I couldn't tell if she was comparing or remembering. Maybe both. "I'm not him," I said, quietly. "I know," she replied. "That's the problem." She smiled after that, a tired, uneven thing that didn't belong on her face. The silence that followed was raw, but not empty. Just two people caught in someone else's echo. I reached for the mouse to close the folder, but she stopped me, her hand covering mine, warm, trembling. "Leave it," she whispered. We stayed like that, her hand over mine, the ghost of another man between us, until the screen dimmed to black. And in that dim light, I realized something shifted, not toward her, but away from the safe version of who I'd been. When I finally looked up, she wasn't watching the screen anymore. She was watching me, as if trying to decide whether she'd just let another story begin too late. I came by one last time. Or at least that's what I told myself on the way over. The semester was ending, and the cafe was cutting back shifts. Everything felt temporary, like the end of something I hadn't realized was already happening. Her house looked the same, pale light spilling through the curtains, that soft stillness that always made the air feel heavier. She opened the door before I could knock twice, like she'd been expecting me again. "You look tired," she said. "So do you." Her laugh was small, but it reached her eyes this time. "Then we'll be quiet together." We didn't talk much. She made tea, I stood by the window, watching the rain blur the world into gray. The sound filled the spaces we used to fill with hesitation. It felt safer that way, two people who'd already said too much, trying to live inside what was left. After a while, she joined me by the window, standing just close enough that our reflections overlapped in the glass. "You ever wish you'd met someone at a different time?" I asked. She thought about it. "No," she said finally. "Only that I'd been brave enough when the time came." I looked at her, the faint tiredness around her eyes, the way her shoulders eased for once, the tea cooling in her hands. She wasn't a mystery anymore. Just a person trying to breathe through the years that had gone too fast. And maybe that was what I loved about her. The quiet honesty of it all. She turned toward me, slow, deliberate. "We can't keep pretending this doesn't feel like something," she said softly. "I know." Her lips parted, then closed again. "And you know we can't, I know that too." The silence that followed wasn't awkward this time. It was steady, almost kind. She set her tea down, her fingers brushing mine as she did, that small, electric contact that still made everything in me hold still. "I don't want to hurt you," she whispered. "You won't." She looked at me for a long moment, and I could see the conflict behind her eyes, the logic, the fear, the pull she didn't want to admit. Then she reached up, gently, and rested her forehead against mine. Not a kiss. Not even close. Just that, a quiet, human contact that said more than any confession could. Her breath was steady. Mine wasn't. After a few seconds, she pulled back, eyes glistening in the low light. "You should go before it gets harder," she said. I nodded, though neither of us moved. Outside, the rain had stopped. The street was shining, clean, like it had been wiped clear of the past hour. When I finally stepped outside, I heard the soft click of the door behind me. Not the sound of someone locking another out, but of someone keeping what little was left safe. And for the first time, the silence between us didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a truth we'd both finally stopped running from. It's been almost a year since that night, the one where she rested her forehead against mine and told me to go. I still don't know if leaving was the right thing, only that I did. Sometimes that has to be enough. I pass her street sometimes on my way to work. The porch light's usually on. I like to think she leaves it that way on purpose, not for me, not for anyone specific, just to remind herself that light can stay on even when no one's there to see it. I've learned to stop replaying the sound of that lock. It's funny how silence can change meaning over time. Back then, it felt like a door closing. Now it feels like permission, to remember without reaching, to love without owning. Mira taught me that love isn't always about staying. Sometimes it's about witnessing someone exactly as they are, even when you know you don't fit into their life the way you wish you did. I used to think connection meant movement, words, touch, proof. But she showed me it can also live in stillness. In shared air. In the space between sentences. She reached out once after I left. Just a message that said, "The shelf's still standing." No greeting, no sign-off, her way of saying she was okay. I stared at that line longer than I should have, smiling like an idiot. Because somehow, that simple thing, the shelf standing, was about everything else that didn't fall apart. Sometimes people enter your life not to stay, but to change the way you see it. To hand you back the parts of yourself you didn't know you'd lost. She made me quieter. Softer. Less certain, maybe, but more honest. I think she was right when she said time makes us late for each other. But I don't believe it means we missed anything. Some moments don't need to last to matter. They just need to happen once, in full, so you can remember what it felt like to be truly seen. I still make her coffee order every now and then when the cafe's empty, black, 2 sugars. I don't drink it, just let it sit there a while until it cools. Some habits aren't meant to be broken, they're meant to remind you of the things that once made you real. And maybe that's what this story really is, Not about love lost or found, but about the quiet kind that teaches you how to stay with yourself after someone leaves. If she ever walks back in, I think I'd just smile and say, the shelf's still standing. And that would be enough, Sparkles. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?